Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guest today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about patents. That's right. We're going to explore all of the different things about patents. Do you need one? Should you have one? What mistakes did you make? I don't know. What else is there to do with patents? We're going to find out. I have a very special guest with me, Austin Bonderer. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
So patents, not everybody's idea of a sexy topic, so to speak, but an important topic. I think you would agree with me on that one. Should we start with what is a patent? No, I don't think we should, but we should probably start with why patents? What got you interested in patents? I'm very curious about that.
What really got me into it? So when I was a kid or a younger person, my dad had a ranch house in Mississippi where I grew up, and the saltwater tank almost caught on fire. So that summer, I was up in an attic wiring a smoke detection system. And then I got to college and I thought to myself, there has to be an easier way of doing this. So basically, I assembled, with the help of my buddy, a wireless smoke detection system. And the prototype that we made, we used the wireless doorbells at the time. So basically, like if one went off, it would obviously had the audible alarm, but then would send a wireless signal, and that way you could relay them through the house, and that way no other kid would have to spend a summer in an attic in Mississippi.
So you invented wireless smoke detectors?
I did. I actually, when I went back and researched it, I believe I beat Kitty to it when they finally came out with it. There's actually a paper on record at the University of Virginia, because it was my thesis paper describing all that I did.
That's interesting. And did you pursue the patent on it?
I pursued the provisional patent application. I wrote it myself. Looking back at it now, horrible patent application. But what happened was I was so interested in patents, I went to go work for the patent office. And they kind of have a policy of you cannot prosecute patents, or you can't get a patent if you work there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. I could have probably pushed it, but I didn't have the funds either at the time to, hire someone to do it properly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Interesting story though. But who else did that? It was
I think it was
drawing a blank.
Kitty.
No, I mean, went to work at the patent office. Was it Einstein or Edison when they just wanted like a cool down moment? Anyway,
It was Einstein, and that's where he came
Einstein,
up with the theory of relativity. So, it's me and Einstein. We're pretty on par. We
Yeah,
had
and
the
you
same
told me
job once, I guess that could be said.
you told me you're related to Roger Federer too before we started recording. I mean, you have very interesting connections in your.
We wouldn't say
in
we're
your-
related. Our families at some point were supposedly from the same part of Switzerland. That's why we
Listen,
both have that ER on the end of our name.
you are keeping company with Roger Federer and Albert Einstein. That's what I heard from this episode. So I don't know. There might be a marketing campaign there. We'll see.
There might be. Yeah. Christmas is our fun. So
Yeah, family holidays. I love it. So anyway, but patents, seriously, it's an important part of running a business, especially where there's IP involved or inventions and products. Talk to me about who should be, and this is a very oversimplified question. I'm sure it's quite complex, but generally speaking, we're talking to entrepreneurs, small business owners. Who should be even thinking about a patent? Like if someone was to reach out to you, what are the common questions they ask, or maybe the common inventions, so to speak, that they're looking to patent?
Right. So, people ask, the biggest question is always, how do I know when I have something that's patentable, or should it be investigated as patentable? Because, not every idea is patentable. But I always say, if you find yourself solving a problem, you need to check and see, if it's patentable, because at the end of the day, whether they say it, necessity is the mother of invention. You hit a problem, you got stopped, you had to figure something out. Maybe someone's never figured out that problem before, and then it might be patentable. Especially if you have an R&D department, if you're spending money on some research and development, you definitely need a process involved in identifying, what might be patentable, what you need to get to a patent attorney so they can review it and tell you, hey, you might want to file something or not.
Mm. So, generally speaking, patents, they last for 20 years. Am I
Yeah,
in the
it's
ballpark?
kind of odd like that. So the term of a patent is 20 years from the date of filing.
Okay.
However, you have no patent rights generally while patent pending. So when we submit an application to the patent office, it typically takes 2 to 3 years before they even look at it.
Mm.
Now, if the patent office takes too long, they will give you what's called a patent term adjustment. So, in other words, your patent can last more than 20 years from the date of filing if the patent office takes too long in getting to it.
Okay. So the reason I asked that question is because the world moves fast these days, right? I mean, let's look at AI for example, which is a software program
Right.
that does solve a problem. However, at the same time, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? I mean, you can find alternative solutions to this very same problem that probably wouldn't infringe on any patent rights. So, how do you sort of navigate this and help if someone approaches you and says, "I want to patent this thing. I know it's patentable," but how do you help them evaluate if it's even worth it because there may be other obvious solutions to the same problem?
Well, that's kind of the hard part. So, AI is a big, you know, monster we can talk about later. That's one of the issues with patents. It's very front loaded. You take a trademark. I had a client one time, they've been in business for like 50 years, and then we registered their trademark. Obviously, time is not of the issue. I suggest
Mhm.
you do it soon, but obviously, you're not timed out. Patents are, you have to invest in that patent before you ever know the marketability. So, a lot of times it's, you invest in a couple and one hits, or you know I've helped clients kind of work around with their designs, and say you have a family of patents around a certain subject matter. First things first, when you think of a patent, don't think of a wall, think of a minefield. Right. People can get through minefields. It's just how hard and difficult it is. So, we'll design something. I'll help them try to design something. And every time we change one little thing, we have to go check 15 patents to see if it, steps on a landmine by doing it that way. So the best thing you can do is if you have a patentable product and it is, kind of the basis of your business, you should try to fortify that with as many patents as possible because you do make it very difficult for others to come into your space.
And does that reduce the cost of it too? I mean, I don't know how much patents cost. Maybe you can outline that generally speaking. But if let's say you have one core product, but you just said pursue multiple patents, do these subsidiary patents get less and less expensive because you're kind of the hard work's already done, or are we just duplicating the cost at that point?
So yeah, if you're doing continuation practice, which is basically you take the originally filed application and you file it again, and then you try to pursue different claim sets, you don't have to rewrite the patent application.
Hmm.
Also, and say that you're working on a product and you need to file a new patent family, but you can pretty much cannibalize the previous patent application, then it shouldn't cost as much. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about paying the attorney to write the patent application for you. That's the bulk of the cost. Now, the one unknown is the prosecution before the office because you don't know which type of examiner you're going to get. While there's one patent office, there's actually thousands of patent offices because each examiner is their own patent office and they all have, different ways of looking at things. And this is, you know, what we do on a daily basis is trying to work with this examiner. We might not agree, but that's their point of view and we have to deal with that point of view that we have at the time.
Hmm. That's interesting. So there's no like standard process for what it should
There
be.
is, there is, but one of the biggest things about patents is what's called obviousness. And
Hmm.
what's obvious to you may not be obvious to me. So a lot of the time that we're going back and forth with the patent office is arguing whether or not the standard of obviousness is properly applied.
Interesting. That seems, I mean, you just said it's very subjective. Can you request different examiners, or are you just kinda stuck?
You're stuck unless you file an appeal. And if you win an
Oh, okay.
appeal, it's not like the appeal says your claims are patentable. They just tell the examiner they have to come up with either a different rejection or allow the case. So if you have a stickler, examiner, there are some examiners that have like 5% allowance rates. So
Hmm.
you could win the appeal and then they'll come back and they'll just throw something else at you.
Sounds
Right.
like a lot of
Nothing you
fun.
can do. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you get to work with different people, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, but that's exactly why your role exists, because I don't know anyone that would wanna voluntarily walk through this if they're trying to patent somebody. I like the minefield analogy too. It's you could get through it, but you might lose a couple of limbs at the same time. Is that true with patents?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Is you have to try to get through, and if you step on any landmine, you're out.
Mm,
That's just the way it works. You won't just lose a limb; like you're just done.
yeah.
So, and that's another thing. I had a client one time, and they were sued probably about 5 times by the same company. And what they were doing was that continuation practice I was telling you about. So every time they got a new patent on the same disclosure, on the same invention, they changed the claims a little bit. So when they changed the claims, they sued my client. He changed his product. They went out, got another continuation filed with claims that read on his new design. So we end up doing it like 4 or 5 times. And this is how continuation practice works.
So that other company had the original patent, is that what you're saying?
You're right. So they had the first. They had the patent. My
Yeah.
client did not. My client had a different type of patentable system, but they were going after him for violating their patent. And
Mm,
when he would make a change, got around the minefield, they were able to use continuation practice, basically filed a child application off of that initial application with rewritten claims. And if you know what you're going after as an attorney, it's a lot easier to draft claims because you know where they're coming from. You know where to fortify that minefield and make them step on it once it's issued.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So let's talk about that too, because the continuation piece. I'm thinking, drugs like Tylenol, Advil, and these are the brand names. They have the original patent. They're long expired, and now we have generics on the shelf. I'm curious because that's going to happen, and especially in the drug market, these things take maybe half of the term of the patent to even get approved, and then you only have a 10-year window to own the market, so to speak. What does it look like from a continuation standpoint to retain the rights to that product, but maybe in, like, it sounds like more of a nuanced vertical, or a niche, if you will. Am I hearing that correct?
Well, the pharmaceuticals, I really can't comment too much on that. Like, I always tell people the two things I stay away from are chemistry and advanced biology.
Hmm.
Like I'll work on patents on all kinds of issues. I've done carbon nanotube technology, but if you're going to come in and tell me about pharmaceuticals, I'll be like, hey, you got to find someone better than me for that. But I would assume, I would assume that like these are chemical compounds that have a very specific structure, and once it's patented, it's patented. I don't know how you change that, but again, pharmaceuticals is not my thing, so I can't really comment on that in a educated way.
Well, even in that's completely fair, and I respect that. It was the most obvious example that popped in my head.
Right.
But let's talk about wireless smoke detectors then.
Yeah.
20 years is up. We want to still own this thing. We want to dominate the market. We know there's someone that wants to come in and undercut us by a third of the price because they don't have the R&D involved and all of that other stuff. What does that look like from a continuation standpoint?
Well, so your 20 years is set. Like your continuation practice. So your first application, it's 20 years from the date of filing, but you
Hmm.
may file a continuation 3 years later. Therefore, it's only 17 years from the date of filing. You cannot
Oh, it's the
extend.
20-year period. I
Right,
gotcha.
that 20-year period is not extendable. Now, people find ways. So, the biggest argument, I guess, with a lot of pharmaceuticals is they come up with this new drug, then they patent the drug itself. But along the way, they come up and they realize that, hey, there's all these different ways we can use it. Like I think Ozempic was one of them. It was a
Mhm.
diabetic drug, right? But when they started testing it, they realized, hey, this can treat uh, weight loss or cause weight loss. So then you're able to get a patent on a new use for an old product.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
the
sense.
example I always use is aspirin. Remember when during the time they're like, "Oh my goodness, give people aspirin when they're having heart attacks."
New use.
So right, new use. You could not patent aspirin itself, but at the time, if you were the first one to discover that, aspirin could be helped to treat heart attacks, you could patent the method of treating a heart attack with aspirin.
Very interesting. Okay, so we just got to get a little creative with what we're doing to protect it.
Hey, we're lawyers too. I mean, as much as you hate these guys, like, I always tell people I'm an engineer with a law degree versus, an attorney. But yeah, I mean, they're, they're the ambulance chasers out there too. So
Yeah, no, it's true,
yeah.
unfortunately. But okay, so let's wrap the episode up. I'd love to hear, I don't know if you're allowed to share, but I'd love to hear maybe some interesting patents you've helped file, or maybe even some stories of someone who wanted a patent but realized there's no real use or benefit to it because of the market they were in. Do you have either of those you could share?
Well, I mean, like, I can't get too far detailed in there, but that does happen. People, I mean, when I used to work at the patent office and stats, people say throw them all out. But at the time, they were saying like only like 5% of all patents ever make it to the market.
Hmm.
So, first thing I tell people who call me is like, look, you better have a business plan to monetize this invention. And way too many people think that what they're going to be able to do is go up to the big company and say, "Hey, look at my cool patent." Typically, they're going to look at your patent and try to design around it if they like the idea. So, where your where your monetary reward comes from is generally building a business around your product, showing its marketability, having the patents to protect it, and then getting bought out, or you get tons of investors who want to come in and stuff like that. So, I always say getting the patent is not easy, but it's the easy part of all the things that you got to do to make money off your invention.
Mm. Is there a chicken or the egg scenario here where you even like to have people produce revenue, investors, something from the business world before you pursue a patent? Is it a balance of both?
Oh, no, no, because understand, and we probably should have touched on this, disclosure is the killer of patents. You literally, smart business practice is to file the patent application before any public disclosure. And unless
Okay.
you inherently know your market and you know what it's doing, you can read by that. But if you start going out to market testers and, all this other kind of stuff, you could lose the right to your patent. And then basically you've just tested the market for your competitor. They didn't have to do any of the R&D. You built the marketplace. All they had to do was come in and rush and produce it. And, sometimes they do it faster than you do, and you become the knockoff.
Yeah, I'll just put this out there. That is a bad business model. So we're not going to pursue that path.
No, no, no. But if you have the patent, you can stop it.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then, I mean, I've heard stories of things like Kickstarter where there's companies in Asia who just watch it. And as soon as they see
Mm.
something get traction, these guys are asking for money so they can build it. But the companies over in Asia are they watch it, they see the traction, then they build it and flood the market before the person can do anything with it.
Yeah, and there's so much technology these days. I know we didn't get in here and we won't go down this rabbit hole, but I'm sure there's a program that you could toss a picture into AI and it will output the specs, the design specs for it. So like if it's a physical product, that seems really risky to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, my buddy showed me something the other day where with his new iPhone, he could take a 3D model of the room that he was in.
That's
So I
crazy.
assume you can do that with a product, a piece of product, throw it into a 3D printer, boom, done.
Yeah. Game over. Wow, this
Yeah.
is very interesting. All right, well this is, like I said, it's an interesting topic, but I don't know that it applies to everybody. You gave us the sort of criteria in the beginning of does this solve a problem is like that baseline filter of should I patent this? What do you find before we wrap this episode up? I'll toss your website on the screen here. It's down the show notes below. But if someone thinks they solved a problem, is there any sort of groundwork they can do themselves, or do you really suggest that they approach someone like you to filter that out and see if they have a patentable product?
You can definitely do your own prior art search to see if something is out there that would prevent you from getting a patent. But oftentimes inventors, if you look at some of the patents, you can't most people cannot see a difference between 30 patents that are issued from the patent office. And the reason
Mm,
is that, sometimes minute changes can solve big problems, but when you look at it on a piece of paper, it looks the same. So don't get super discouraged. Do your own prior art search, then approach an attorney. Generally, they're going to say, hey, we have to get the professionals to search this as well, unless what you found precludes you from getting a patent clearly. Because, you know, it, it- that's the thing about searching. It might be out there and no one ever found it.
good
So,
point.
we're always working on a risk reward type of situation, because even if you get your patent allowed, it could become invalidated at some point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, your website's on the screen. It's in the show notes below. Who's your favorite type of inventor or business person to work with? Do you have a type who you have more success with?
I mean, I love inventors. I mean, it's a thing. Like, everyone's like, "Do you have to have a lot of clients?" I'm like, "No," because inventors they invent, and I love to seeing the stuff that they come up with. You're like, "Oh man, I wish I would have thought of that," or these kind of things. I enjoy tinkering with things, and I've come up with certain things here and there. But the things that come across my desk, I'm like, man, I'm just not nearly as good as some of these people are.
Yeah. No, it's super cool. Well, after you reach out to Austin, you get your product or whatever it is patented, come back here. We'll teach you all different ways to build a business around it. Austin, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I appreciate it.
For those of you watching, listening, again, everything in the show notes down below. Go check it out. Reach out to Austin if you have an idea, if you have questions. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Harmonious at Lunch podcast. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and we want to invite you to join us in the Small Business Success Facebook group, our private group where guests and listeners come together to grow your business. We want impact-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to go to the next level in this group so we can all share ideas, collaborate, and grow our businesses together. Go to whatif.com/group, and we want to invite you to join today. See you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch.